I believe we are back. We are in exec session. It's a bit longer than anticipated, but good discussions and good questions regarding those exec session topics. But for right now, we'll move on with the rest of the agenda for the evening. We are in our public meeting of the Board of Education on this Tuesday on September 22nd. And at this point, just asking, is there any reason to modify the agenda? It is in front of us, and I'm not aware of any changes that we need to make. If not, and I'm seeing shaking of heads. So no modification to the agenda, and so then we'll just go into public comment period. And I know a few folks have signed up already. Tricia and Emily are going to run this process this evening. And so Tricia, I believe, has the list of those who have signed up and others who wish to speak. We certainly encourage interaction with the public. We have received phone calls and emails, and there's been a lot of interaction with the community. This is another opportunity to do so. And this is the section where the public can comment. There will be board responses after comments, so you'll have 3 minutes for each person who wishes to speak. Don't feel you have to speak for the full 3 minutes, but certainly we want to hear from you. And that is according to district and board policy. And so we look forward to hearing from folks tonight. And Tricia, I believe I'm going to hand it off to you, and Emily will keep time.
Yes, thank you, Ainsley. The first person that emailed me who would like to speak is Ludai Augustine.
Good evening, Ludi Augustine here. Thank you for all of the extra time and energy you are putting in right now along with us. I am a teacher and a parent in the district, and teachers and parents both are frustrated right now. For 2 months this summer, leadership has led us on a fantasy exercise where all parents and teachers have voice and choice. It was pretty clear that those numbers would never work, even if the same percentage of teachers and parents chose to return in person. The chances that those percentages would line up in terms of certification, content area, and level were highly unlikely. The district leadership was told by teachers on the July task force that this was an unworkable plan, and yet they were encouraged to go forward with that and scrap any hybrid option. The narrative that has been allowed to continue in the community is that this is the fault of the teachers, and the teachers simply made a choice like parents did and considered aspects of health and family circumstances. Teachers also have insider knowledge. We know that at Ithaca High School, the sinks have not worked for years. The air quality has made people have to quit, and we look forward to seeing the report from Train. 2 things also weigh heavily on teachers, and that is the fact that teaching in person, we realized quickly, is a misnomer. Some of our students will be remote, some of them will be in the classroom, but regardless, we will be teaching remotely, no matter what the plan is. Teachers have worked all summer to become better remote teachers. Now that we are being asked to pivot to a hybrid model, teaching in Google Classroom wearing a mask, we ask that you reach out to other districts that have already implemented hybrid models, reach out to their superintendents, benefit from their thinking and experience. And I encourage you to seriously reach out to teachers and take their boots on the ground, rubber meets the road experience at the high school. Some of our greatest leaders are in the leadership team and in our department chairs, and they absolutely can offer some insight that is definitely needed now that we're moving forward into a hybrid model, and many, many details need to be worked out before October 5th. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Up next, we have Karina Lockenhoff.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Yes. All right. Thank you so much for giving me the time. I would like to, as a parent of a 5th grader and an 8th grader, I would like to commend the district for all the effort that goes into reopening to in-person learning. I strongly support in-person learners, but as we focus on their needs, we must not forget about online learners, such as my children, and up to half of the students in the district, depending which school level. This petition is for them. On September 16, the Ithaca City School District announced an updated plan for the transition to in-person learning, which requires all teachers without medical exemptions to teach in school buildings. This raises concerns about the district's commitment to maintain an online learning option that is comparable in quality as in-person learning. The district has yet to release details on what will be offered to online-only learners after the reopening, but initial communication suggests that online-only cohorts in elementary schools will be substantially larger than class sizes in regular school years, up to 30 or more, and middle and high school teachers will simultaneously teach online and in-person students, posing the risk that online students become second-class learners. Potential inequities between in-person and online learners raise major concerns because they would be unfair to the 48% of families who choose online learning in good faith that the district would equally serve their students, and they would create a strong incentive for families to switch to in-person learning at the earliest possible opportunity and increase school occupancy to unmanageable and unsafe levels. We have to get online learning right so people feel safe for choosing it. We urge the district to publicly commit to offering an online learning option of comparable quality as in-person learning for the remainder of the school year. Completely avoid mixed online in-person lessons at the elementary level and minimize them at the higher level. Keep class sizes of elementary online cohorts comparable to class sizes in regular school years, 25 or less. When mixed online and in-person lessons are unavoidable, provide training and technological equipment to ensure that online learners aren't merely listening into an in-person classroom, but are treated as equal learners with equal opportunities for interaction. Keep online students with IEPs matched with their existing service providers, and establish an oversight committee staffed by ICSD teachers with full access to all relevant information. This is a petition that I created on Friday. It has since gathered 250 signatures. You can still sign it at change.org, ICSD online. Again, change.org/ICSD online. And I really urge the district to take the needs of online learners seriously, because in-person learners can learn if online learners are not taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lockenhoff. The next speaker we have is Katie Boardman.
Okay, now I think it's working. Hi, my name is Katie Boardman. I am the mother of an 8th grade DeWitt student, and I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts tonight. Like all other families, I was excited for a 5-day return to school buildings, and of course equally as disappointed and confused when that didn't work out. There still appears to be much repair to be made, but I've seen tremendous improvement in the communication from the district from the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to point that out. I want to thank the board and the administration for working tirelessly since that time. From a family perspective, I can see that the transparency has increased and the communication from the district includes more specific details. This has built trust for me as a parent, even when all the answers are not known. I feel more trusting when the district says we don't know the answers rather than not sharing at all. I also was nervous last week when I heard that the hybrid option for secondary students might not include any in-person instruction at all. And so I'm very grateful to the board and the administration for reconsideration of the social, emotional, and educational needs of our secondary students. I very much appreciated the comments on the board last week that indicated that complete virtual schooling for secondary students would fail to meet their needs. While 5 days would have worked best for my family, 2 days is exponentially better than 0. And for that, I'm very grateful. And then lastly, just my perception of the transition to Canvas within these last 2 weeks has drastically changed the way that I feel about online learning. It is a very organized format. It's really changed the experience for learners and their families. And I'm very impressed with the rollout of Canvas as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Boardman. I am not seeing any more chat. Anything else in the chat? I do see it. Okay, I see another raised hand. Auburn and Steve.
Hi, everybody. I'm Auburn Seidel. I'm a parent of a second grader at BJM. This is a soon-to-be ICSD student, a couple years. I just wanted to say thank you to the board and thank you to teachers and thank you to the superintendent and all of the administration for making the really tough commitment to reopen our school buildings. I think in-person learning is really what's required and necessary for so many of our learners, and I know that has been a tough choice, but I think it was a brave one. And so I wanted to say thank you for that, and thank you for all of the time and energy that's going into the educational options for all of our children this year. I know it's above and beyond the call of duty, so thanks.
Thank you very much. We have Merrill Phipps who would like to speak.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Meryl Phipps. I'm the executive director at Village at Ithaca. I am also the parent of 4 kids in the school district. And tonight I'm here as a member of the Code of Conduct Advisory Council. We've spent the last several months working really hard on something called the Code of Conduct Addendum, which I know sounds incredibly dull, and which I know will be has already been in front of the policy committee, possibly in front of the board, and is coming back again in the coming weeks. But I just wanted to take this chance to express the urgency I feel about that document and that document's importance. The reason that we wrote that document this summer was to ensure that the district's commitment to overturning and disrupting oppressive policies came to fruition in the process of reopening schools. That document addresses all sorts of situations that I believe that our school district and our administration wants to take care of, but in the time that it's taking to get that passed, I'm hearing from families who are articulating problems with exactly the sorts of policies that we don't want in place. Grading policies that are not flexible for students who are struggling with online learning, attendance policies that are not flexible for students who are struggling with online learning, camera use policies that do not take into account the privacy that some students and families need in order to keep their cameras off and not allow people into their homes. All of these things are things that I know our district wants to avoid in order to ensure that inequity isn't furthered in this pandemic. But until we have some really strong language from the top down, I'm afraid that families are going to be experiencing sort of the opposite of what we want on a one-to-one basis in individual classes and individual buildings. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention. I'm really hoping for a strong commitment from the board that we are not going to allow, for example, students with special needs who are struggling to access virtual learning, to allow those families to feel nervous that they're going to be receiving a CPS hotline call because of attendance concerns. So thank you. I just wanted to articulate that this evening, and I look forward to further conversations.
Thank you, Meryl. Just a reminder that board responses will be at the end of the public comment. Up next is Emily Workman.
Hi, thank you for having me here, and thank you for all of the work that you all are doing. I know that this is a huge undertaking. I want to talk about the family choice options between in-person and remote learning. This is a question that we were just asked for preferences of back in the summer, long before, or yet still with no information about what either of those options are going to look like. And we were assured many times, both by the district and also our school, which is Northeast Elementary, I have a first grader there, that if we needed to change those decisions, that we would be able to. And we're assured many times that there was space in the school for every student that is enrolled there. And now that circumstances have changed and the assurances from the school district have changed dramatically about the quality of online education that our children are set to receive, we are being told that we are no longer able to attend in person. And while I recognize the space constraints and the concerns over distancing policies, that has been an assurance all along that we were able to get our children into school. And there are many families now who are feeling stuck between a rock and a hard place because we have no way for our children to get the education that we need because we're not being allowed to attend school anymore. And I think that before the October 5th deadline, I would love to hear from the board about how they're going to ensure that every child that needs to receive a free, high quality public education in the school district and needs to do that inside of a school building is going to have the right to do so and isn't going to be turned away simply because they put an alternative preference on an online document months ago over the summer. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Workman. My apologies if I do not pronounce your name correctly. Boem John Kim.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. I have two sons, and one in high school and one in middle school, and they decided to do distance learning. I have a question regarding how the new hybrid in-person model will impact the distance learning, because the letter by the Dr. Brown described basically for what is the hybrid in-person model. So it's centered on in-person model. So I would like to know what is the effect on the distance learning. So it appears that the ICSD does not match the distance learning students with distance learning only teachers anymore. So which means that teachers teach both in-person and distance learning students at the same time. So if it is the case, how can teachers pay attention to distance learning students? I suspect that teachers naturally pay attention only to in-person students. So I believe that this new hybrid in-person model would compromise the distance learning severely. In addition, there is a change from A, B, C, D days to A, B, and office hour day, CD in high school, which decreased the actual instruction days by 20%. So this would increase the burden of a single day by 20% more. So I think that this new hybrid model would increase the students' burden even more. So the bottom line is how ICSD can ensure the quality of distance learning by adopting this new hybrid in-person model. Thank you for listening.
I'm not sure if Trisha's still connected, so the next person who has their hand raised to speak is Alexandra Hartley.
Hi there. I'm a teacher at LACS. Just first of all, want to thank the board for listening to all of the concerns, and thank especially all of the parents that brought up concerns about equity with distance learning. That's a concern that I share as well from a teacher perspective, that the distance learners are going to be marginalized when we switch to hybrid instruction. I also wanted to ask, as a teacher who's currently working full-time in online instruction, and we'll be doing that throughout next week too. I'm really concerned that teachers won't have time to set up their classrooms, get our spaces ready for having in-person learners coming back on October 5th while also teaching at the same time. I'm also really concerned that there'll be a drastic interruption to instruction that we're just getting off the ground doing as we come back on October 5th. So I'm curious how teachers are going to be supported in that transition to being in person while still working full-time online up until the day we transition, and how this transition is going to be carried out in a way that minimizes disruption to learning and tries to keep students in the routines that they're just beginning to develop.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have Cheryl Kramer.
Hi, Cheryl. You should have a few requests on your screen to unmute. You'll have to unmute yourself in order to speak. I think Ms. Kramer might be running into technical difficulties. If anyone else is interested in speaking during the public comment section, you can raise your hand using the blue raise hand function at the bottom of your screen, or you can send a message to myself or Ms. Beresford.
Thank you, Emily. I just received a chat message. Ms. Kramer is unable to get on at the moment. And I don't see any more raised hands. You can also send a message to the board clerk or to the Let's Talk portal. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia and Emily, for managing an outstanding public comment session. Thank you, everyone, for calling in, well, tuning in and speaking. And now it is time for board responses for and when who wishes to respond.
Go ahead. I'll go ahead, Erin.
Okay, I'm always willing to. I think first, Meryl, thank you for speaking to this. I also worked on the code of conduct, and I think it's important, and I hope that perhaps tonight we can discuss as a board a way to move forward and perhaps expedite getting that out, because it's critical, and I'm seeing some of the same things you're speaking of. Forgive the chaos in the background. It's bedtime. Thank you to everyone for speaking. I honestly, I share your concerns. I know this is really hard. It is an absolutely imperfect process for a really, really difficult time. And I don't think there's any way for anyone to be happy right now or pleased or have a perfect situation. I can speak personally that my situation is not great. But it's not the fault of teachers. It's not the fault of anyone. It's the pandemic. And I know that everyone I'm seeing is working incredibly hard and doing their best. And I know how frustrating this is, and I know that having 30 kids in an online class is not ideal, but everywhere in the country, I'm not seeing, I don't know any school that has an ideal situation. And I hope that we can all just keep working together and being kind and patient with each other as we trudge through this.
I'll go ahead. So a lot of the questions and issues raised are going to be addressed by our admin team later in the meeting. But I just want to say that I understand, I deeply sympathize with the parents and the teachers expressing their frustration, their anxiety, the struggle that they're going through. I mean, for teachers, the beginning of the school year always has anxiety and stress, and this is like magnified that many-fold. And as Erin was just saying, you know, none of us chose to be in this situation. It's the pandemic. And so many of the issues and problems we're facing are really out of our control, that our hands are tied. And so I want to say thank you, especially to Katie Boardman, for looking for some of the bright spots, the silver linings, or the things that have gotten better. And for instance, for looking at, even though she would have preferred to have 5 days for her secondary school students, 2 is much better than none. So what is keeping me going, and I'm not doing this like our administrators are, you know, really 24/7 addressing these overwhelming issues and concerns. But what keeps me going is, you know, at the times when I really want to quit, or just like, you know, put my arms over my head and dive under the pillow, is when I hear people looking at what might actually be a silver lining, or something that actually might get better in relation to things that we've been forced to do and try and do. And I think we'll have some more discussion about what some of those potential benefits might come from us being, you know, forced into this crisis mode. I know one thing Meryl brought up, the Code of Conduct addendum, and specifically she did mention about grading policies that are oppressive. And this is in fact something that I've been talking about for about 5 years, and recognizing, and I had, as a teacher, in the last years of my career, I went to several conferences that really changed my thinking about grading policies. And then as a board member, I've seen presentations by the superintendent and assistant superintendent of Shenandoah School District about their process for trying to change homework and grading policies that they viewed as inequitable and oppressive. So for us to be working on that in the middle of a pandemic is pretty daunting, but I feel like the pandemic makes it all the more necessary. So we'll be talking about that, I'm sure. And so thank you everybody for sharing. And as at every meeting, there's a call for patience and empathy. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Moira. Other comments?
I think Anne is trying to speak, but she can't unmute.
That's right.
There she goes. You just did.
Okay, I'm good. Yeah, our internet went down. First, I just want to say thank you for everybody who came to share their views and kind of reiterate what others have said, that it's just a really complex time. And I also want to just thank the teachers for really facing kind of an unprecedented challenge in terms of trying to figure how to proceed on the fly. And to thank the staff for working to kind of work through so many different types of solution. And I think what I'm hearing tonight is partially a reflection of just how complicated this problem is. There's no easy solution going forward. So the minute you think you have one idea that you think you've accomplished it, then you kind of run up against something that perhaps you couldn't have known until you went in that direction. So I really do appreciate the patience that everybody has, and also the level of innovation and invention that I see going on. I also would like to reiterate Meryl's point. Many of the things in the Code of Conduct addendum, I think, are really important to consider. And I know that that addendum went around to numerous groups for feedback. And so I'd like to encourage people to actually take a look at that and get that feedback back to the districts, so we could proceed to kind of really put that out there, because I think grading policy, homework policy, attendance policy, I mean, all kinds of things that, especially as we work with remote or partially remote, bring up all kinds of things that need to be resolved. So that's all.
I'd also like to thank everyone who weighed in with their concerns, their questions, their frustrations, their hopes. As my fellow board members have said, these are unprecedented times, and we are watching the greatest educational challenge of the modern age play out in our community, our country, around the world. Students, teachers, families are just facing so many issues. We are going to try to do our best. A couple of the issues that I wanted to address specifically were, and I will let administrative team speak about this more, but distance versus in-person and the differences between instruction at the elementary level and instruction at the high school level, and why the secondary level had to go to a hybrid model instead of the 5-day model, and how that might affect in-person versus distance. The big difference between elementary and secondary is that elementary teachers are certified for elementary education, whereas at the secondary level, teachers are certified for a very specific discipline. They're certified in social studies, they're certified in math, music, science, English, art. You can't have crossovers. You can't put an English teacher into a science classroom and have them teach, or move a science teacher to an English classroom. And especially at our high school, we have a very wide range of curricular choices. And the situation at the high school is in part a result of the decision to try to offer as many of the very rich curricular offerings as possible. Now, since students are no longer going to be in, students who are physically attending are no longer going to be in 5 days, but are going to be in 2 days, and remote learners 2 days, that really means that on any given day, 2/3 of the class is going to be learning virtually. So while there may be a different dynamic within the class of students who come in once a week, then they're going to, because of the block schedule, students really are only going to be in any class 1 day a week. They will have to be learning they'll be learning online too. So I don't see remote instruction taking a back seat because it can't, and I don't see that at the elementary level either. The small in-person class sizes, those are mandated by public health, social distancing, that has to be. And we wish we would have more opportunities, but we are, as we always have in the Ithaca School District, trying to give as many choices curricularly to as many students as possible. And it's a work in progress. There are going to be setbacks, there are going to be hiccups, but we will all continue to do our best, and I know the teachers will.
Others, Chris, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Thank you, Meryl, for sharing about the code of conduct and how that adversely impacts folks, and sharing it publicly so as many people can hear it as possible. And to respond to everyone who shared, our best intent and actions are to try to do this as well as possible. Unfortunately, to navigate instruction in person, virtually, keeping people safe, meeting the needs of everyone at every level there are, is almost impossible. I'm just trying to be honest. But also, the empathy that we feel, because as a grandparent, as a parent, as having friends who are affected by this, there is no easy solution. And here's the other reality. Every day I get up and I have to work with the public, I have to engage. So when we go to this, it's going to be fluid. There's going to be changes. There's going to be more frustration. And I don't say that to discourage anyone. I say that to really play out that we're in this together. We are a community. And the frustration may increase, but the need for communication, dialogue, and understanding is going to need to increase as well. I can say, and I don't try to ever speak for my fellow board members, no one takes this lightly. Everyone takes this incredibly seriously. We take the welfare of our teachers seriously. We take the learning and education of our students extremely seriously. And then also, all of the people who provide services to the school district. This is so multi-layered that when I think about what everybody's trying to do to get this rolling and rolling well, I really appreciate it. But I also know that it leads to further frustration down the road. So I know I'm redundant and I'm sharing everything that my fellow board members shared. I just want to continue moving forward as a community.
Thanks, Chris. Nicole, Eldred, do you wish to weigh in?
Yeah, as soon as I clear dinner out my throat here, trying to say things that haven't been repeated, and I'm trying to be succinct. The good thing about doing this virtually is I can actually take notes, which is something that's often difficult to do in a real meeting. So here are my reflections. I believe your name is Ludi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. You basically spoke about magical thinking, right? And us thinking that we could balance these interests and get it right. I'm fully supportive of the attempt that we made to do so, because that is what we're hearing from our community would serve them best. As Chris said, there are multiple interests. It had to be managed from parents who can't possibly figure out how they're going to manage work and teaching their own kids. And if that work is a teacher, that's exacerbated. And I could go on, but the attempt was valuable, even if we eventually realized it couldn't work. I've done some research and uncovered at least 10 or 15 situations right in our own area where a variety of folks are as angry or angrier about a multitude of issues that have nothing to do with the one that you addressed. There is no magic playbook for this. I hear everyone saying we're in a pandemic. We're not just in a pandemic. We're in a pandemic and we are rudderless. Our national organization is not helping us. Our state organization has left us to our own devices. We are just 9 volunteers and some incredibly disciplined and dedicated staff trying to do this well. And we will continue to try and do so. Karina, you spoke about the numbers. I don't even want to address that because our executives are going to get into the legalities and the CDC recommendations about the specific numbers later. Don't want to steal that thunder. They know 18 times more about that than I do. Katie, I want to just reiterate the impression you left with me is that you are following this in a very detailed way. So I thank you for that. This Canvas program application, we just heard about this tonight as a curriculum committee. We were excited as well. We have much more work to do to figure out what the right combination of tools are going to be to continue this excellent education. Aubryn, thank you for appreciating the work that goes in it. You know, I have great respect for you and Steve. Thanks for paying attention. Stay on us. We need to get this right. Meryl, again, this code of conduct stuff, if we don't get this right, we throw all the work we've done to rebalance these equity numbers that we've talked about, you and I personally, how much we've gotten them down from where they were. We don't get this right, they go right back to where they used to be. And that would be a shame for this entire community. Emily, Pat addressed your concerns about numbers and the shift in choice, and hopefully that's satisfactory. If not, we're here to listen to you. And Lexi, always good to hear from you. Very specific question for you that maybe you can't answer now, but let's talk about it offline. You said, in addition to distant students being marginalized, how will we support you in the transition? And the question I have for you is, what makes sense? What type of support would you be looking for in that transition that would make you feel and make somebody who could come in to help you feel safe and be efficient? So again, we have to speak about that individually. Let's do so. I need to hear that from you. And that's all I have. So I just thank everyone for taking the time to be specific in your communication with us. You can expect us to try and do the same. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Nicole, do you want to weigh in or?
Sure. Thank you everyone for being here this evening. A lot's been said, so I don't want to repeat things that have been said by fellow board members. I do want to emphasize the fact that we are definitely flying the plane while building it, which means that it's imperfect. As Eldred mentioned, this is a national crisis in terms of school districts across the country trying to figure out an equitable way forward in an inequitable situation. We have Cuomo, who is dropping executive orders every other week. We have the CDC that is putting out information and taking that back. So with that said, I understand that the plan is pivoting quite frequently, and families and staff don't necessarily have the privilege to be able to be as flexible or to be flexible at all with the constant pivoting. We're all living in the same nightmare. It's impacting us differently based on race, based on class, based on privilege. And that's the reality, and it's a sad reality that our kids and our teachers and staff have to deal with. Ludi, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I think that your words of a fantasy exercise definitely stood out to me in terms of, I can totally empathize with having 3 children, but specifically my daughter, giving her options and her getting upset when she feels like she doesn't really have an option because I'm hoping that she would decide one way and she didn't. So I empathize with all of our teachers and staff that were given an option or choice and felt like or feel as if that's been taken back. I think that's real, it's valid. And I empathize with that. I think Karina brought up, making sure that virtual learning is equitable. I'm not sure that I believe that any of our children this year are receiving or being provided any kind of equity, given the fact that we're living in a crisis. And when we're in a crisis, we're not necessarily in a space to be innovative or creative because we are putting out fires every single day. So I guess I'm reemphasizing the point that we are living day by day and moment by moment and trying to do the best that we can, while also acknowledging that children and staff are falling in between the cracks, and everyone doesn't have what they need right now because we don't have the resources based on just the national response to this crisis. But I do believe that our staff and our administration team are trying their hardest, and that we are going to have to address the concerns constantly as they come up. I think it's important to address the fact that our Secretary of Education does not believe in education and is constantly putting out things that go against supporting the needs of students with special needs. So when we have that kind of leadership right now in this country, it makes it incredibly hard to come up with a plan with continuity and sustainability that addresses the diverse needs of our students. So again, asking for patience as we all try to figure out a plan. Meryl, thank you for bringing up the concerns in regards to the addendum to the code of conduct. I personally have concerns regarding attendance and grading policies in regards to the fact that there are plenty of people in Tompkins County that don't have access to Wi-Fi. I know that my Wi-Fi is hurting with my 3 kids being on Google Hangouts and me having, this is my 8th Zoom meeting today. It's hard, and I hope, I pray that our teachers and staff have compassion and empathy, that students and families are doing the best that they can. So grading work and being physically and emotionally present is hard for everyone right now. So I would hope that our grading systems would reflect that compassion and empathy for students. And I'm hoping that Dr. Brown and Lily will address the concerns around sizable classes of online learning and what that support looks like for teachers and for students, for aides and assistants, and how students will get what they need in the 6-7 hour period. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Nicole. I certainly appreciate and I echo the sentiments and of all the board members. I will not restate them, but know that you have all stated the issues well, and I appreciate everyone who spoke and who addressed the board. What I do know is that we will continue to work in the best interests of the children of this community, and to that end, I think if we get to the business of our meeting tonight, we will continue to do that. And so if we could, I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, and we just need to approve it. It is fairly limited, but then we can get on to the business at hand. So the consent agenda is there and for you. It did go finance work session, went through it. I don't know that, Chris, if there's anything dramatic we need to address, but feel free.
Hi, folks. No, I'm trying to navigate 2 screens without losing one. So got the treasurer's report. Also, No Kids Hungry grant, which received $15,000. And then just the approval of some transfers, but I'm not sure if Amanda wants to speak to the No Kids Hungry grant.
Nope, it's just pretty simple. That's going into the C fund, which is where the fund that is for our school lunch program.
Thank you.
So Chris, I think we're pretty much ready to go, Chris, right? And so we just need a motion on the consent, and then we can get a second.
I'll move the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Second by Pat, and Tricia, if we could go ahead and call it.
Rob Ainsley.
Yes.
Erin Croyle.
Yes.
Eldred Harris.
Yes.
Nicole LaFave,
Yes.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichlin,
Yes.
Patricia Wazalu.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm back, everybody. I dropped my water bottle, but we're good. Thanks for that. And so, Dr. Brown, we are to your superintendent's report, and then on with the school district business.
Yes, sir, Ms. Dansby. Thank you for the opportunity, and I will be brief as we have much to get to later. But I just want to take this opportunity to provide a special thank you, congratulations, and well done to the Ithaca High School and the young people who were part, and the adults who were part of being named a National Banner Unified Champion School. We're one of a few schools in the entire country to receive this special recognition. I was on a Zoom call last week with the YAC group, the Youth Activation Committee, and I think folks need to know how active they've been, even when our buildings were closed. That group was part of the organizing group, and Stephanie Valletta, Samantha Little, Margie Shaw. I mean, they've been the great adult leaders and facilitators, but our young people were behind growing our unified basketball team from a team of 9 members to last year, I believe y'all had close to 25 students out there. And then we expanded from a basketball team to add a bowling team. It's been special to watch them. When you look up inclusion, you see the ways in which our young people have showed us how to be inclusive. Even last year, in the midst of our closures, they stayed connected with one another, and they stayed connected with other young people in our school community. They facilitated the Pass It On Challenge, the Virtual High Five Challenge. They hosted video game segments. It's just amazing work. Again, I can't say enough about Ithaca High School and all the young people and adults who were part of us receiving this recognition, but more importantly, the work that you're doing every single day. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, Ms. Ainsley.
So very good. Thanks, Dr. Brown. Really outstanding work for the unified teams. It was great in the past to be able to see the kids compete with other schools in the Southern Tier, and we look forward to the day when we can do that again, and hopefully that will be soon. So school district business, Aetna insurance plan, basically dealing with retiree health insurance. We are self-insured, and Bob and Amanda, if you want to walk us through this, we know that we're changing to a better plan for our retirees, I believe.
Sure. Thank you, Rob and board members, and thank you to those retirees who are still on the meeting tonight. In a year that had BC, before COVID, this would have probably been the first thing we talked about. But tonight it had to wait a little bit. So this is a plan to move from the Hartford to an Aetna fully insured plan. It's for Medicare retirees only, not the full retiree population. Christina Braga from ENV, which is our third-party administrator, and our independent contractor to help us not only handle the potential move, because the board would vote on it at its next board meeting, but also every few years we're going to go out and shop the plan. It's just it's the nature of the insurance game, and so I've talked about the dual needs that are not in conflict. One is to make sure we protect retiree benefits, and we have to have plans that are equal to or better than the plan that they currently are under, and also be good fiscal stewards of taxpayer monies. So we have reviewed the Aetna plan. Christina will jump on here in a moment to work through the one-page document for tonight. It is equal or better to the Hartford insurance plan that we're currently on. We did receive some feedback from our last public meeting, especially about the appeals process. That has to be worked on regardless of whether we stay with the Hartford or Aetna, and we're certainly more than willing to make an appeals process that is less bureaucratic. It's not our intent to be bureaucratic with our retirees. So I think, Christina, if you're ready, if you want to just work us through this one pager.
Yeah, sounds good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, everybody. Christina Braga here from ENB Insurance. I know you probably have heard me speak a few times. I know we've done this Aetna presentation probably 7 or 8 times. So we didn't want to go through all of the details again for you, but we did want to hit on the highlights just as a reminder for everyone. Again, this is an Aetna Medicare Advantage plan. Today, the post-65 retirees have a Medicare Supplement plan. Medicare Supplement plan is Medicare's first, and then there's a plan that comes behind the scenes. What we're proposing here today is a Medicare Advantage plan that is a group plan. It also has a passive network. Some of the questions we've gotten in were folks concerned about not being able to see their providers. This is a plan that's going to cover you anywhere in the United States. So if you live in Massachusetts, North Carolina, as long as your provider accepts Medicare or is willing to bill, just like with the Hartford today, you'll have no issue with the provider. So that was really a bulk of the questions that we received. But we do want to go over some of the plan enhancements just as a reminder. This plan will have no limit for non-Medicare covered chiropractic, so you'll be able to get that maintenance chiropractic you weren't able to before. Acupuncture will now be added. You'll have more coverage for routine pap smears, which was a question before. Routine vision exams will be covered in full once per year. There will be a $100 eyewear reimbursement every 24 months for retirees, even if it's not for medically necessary, like cataract pair of glasses. You'll have that eyewear reimbursement you can take advantage of. There will also be a $1,000 hearing aid reimbursement every 36 months. No limit to international emergency coverage. So with the Hartford, knock on wood, we never had to use it, but behind the scenes, there was a lifetime limit, right? But then if anyone ever had to experience that lifetime limit, the district was willing to self-fund that, no big deal. Here we have no lifetime limit. It's for emergencies, but also we've gotten questions about, what happens if I'm overseas and something develops? I have a really bad headache or a bad bug bite and I need to seek treatment. That would be covered. Something that's developed or occurred after you're out of the country and you feel you need to seek care for, that's going to be covered. So that was a common question that we received. On this plan, Silver Sneakers is a brand new benefit. So now retirees will have a free gym membership program around the United States. There's also voluntary home visits. They'll come in the home and assess, if you feel comfortable, they'll say, oh, geez, did you know there's a cord under this rug? Or maybe this dim light bulb is, causing some strain on your eyes or causing accidents or whatever the case may be. There's voluntary services that this program will offer to you. In addition, there's resources for living. If you need help finding someone to mow your lawn, shovel your driveway, they have a program here for that. And then there's also a discount program available for over-the-counter medication. So if you just need a simple aspirin, and of course you could go to any pharmacy to get that. If you do go to a CVS or order online, there is a discount for those over-the-counter medications, which you didn't have today. Things to consider, we want to make sure everybody knows, with any implementation, there are a few steps involved. You will receive a new ID card. The beautiful thing is that it would be one ID card. So before you had your Medicare card you were showing, your Hartford card, and an Express Scripts card. Now, with this transition, if you decide to move forward, it would be one Aetna card for everything. You could safely file away your Medicare card for a later time. Your copays will be the same depending on your bargaining unit, but the formulary is different and changes every year. So the formulary is the big list of drugs, and it tells you what tier it falls into, your tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. So that changes every year. We do have a list up on the district website, but closer to 1/1, that changes for every formulary. So we'll be updating that as it becomes available. Also, a part of implementation, you'll have to have a doctor send over a new 90-day script. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. If you do have a prior authorization on a drug, you'd have your doctor send over that as well. And as far as implementation, the reason we've been talking about this kind of all over the summer is because Medicare does have certain timelines. They want to make sure that retirees are communicated to in plenty of time. You receive your documents, your cards, and your formulary, and you feel comfortable. Aetna actually even has a pre-enrollment number where each retiree can call and walk through all of the scenarios. So implementation would need to start rather soon just to meet those timelines. So we'll be doing possibly some work behind the scenes just in case. If not, no harm, no foul if you decide not to move forward. Okay. So with that being said, Is there anything else that I can answer for you? Anything I can address in regards to the Aetna possible transition?
So Christina, side by side with Hartford and frankly Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's what typically we get that question consistently is, and compared to Hartford is certainly there are enhancements, there's better coverage, I believe, for eyewear and hearing aid, et cetera. And international travel was always a question. But compared to Blue Cross Blue Shield, how does that compare?
Yeah, so I think, Bob, do you want to pick up that question?
Yeah, sure. Rob, thanks. By law, we have to compare with the plan that retirees have right now. So we started with Blue Cross Blue Shield a couple of years ago, and we did this exact same exercise. And again, I think it bears repeating that at that point in time, we had the unions who reviewed it as well and sent it to their Albany folks to review as well. And they all agreed that going to the Hartford was equal to or better than the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan we had at that time. So that Blue Cross Blue Shield plan then is retired, or it could go through multiple changes with other parties that might be offered it, but then the plan is the Hartford plan, and that's the one we have to compare moving forward. So Aetna compared with Hartford is also a better plan.
I appreciate that, Bob.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that idea or that question was addressed tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
But certainly there's enhancements to Aetna over Hartford for us here locally, frankly nationally probably. But and Aetna certainly is well known in this community, I believe, with a variety of plans at other organizations, institutions in town. So it's a well-known provider. So that's solid. And just a question regarding the timeline. We are not going to vote on this tonight, but at our next meeting, is that soon enough? We have been talking about this for a while, and it's been in the works. So just explain the timing again for us.
Yeah, the timing would be the next board meeting to vote on the resolution. There's some behind the scenes work that we already started. Again, as Christina mentioned, if the decision ultimately is not to go, we could just fold that work up and at that point. But we should be on schedule if, in fact, the board, and it is my recommendation that we move to the Aetna plan. If you vote on that, we should be on time to move everyone by January 1st.
Right, Bob. And we as a board and for our oversight, when we are presented with a better plan for our retirees, we are beholden to have a better plan for our retirees. We have to look out for their best interests, and obviously as well as the community and the taxpayer. But if we have a better program, then it's not demonstrably better, and it's proven to be better side by side. And that's what we should be looking at as a board, correct?
Yes, and we, quite frankly, we're taking advantage of the competitive nature of the insurance plans, and hopefully that continues. But as we said in a previous meeting, if it doesn't make sense fiscally to move, we're not going to do it. We're not going to put retirees through this for, this amount of money that doesn't make sense to do it. But this one does.
Oh, very good. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions out there from board members regarding?
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, and I want to make a comment. So my question is, so I, as a retiree of ICSD who is over 65, I've been on the Hartford now for 2.5 years. I have paid nothing out of pocket except for my prescription copays. Is that the case with Aetna?
That's right. Yep, Moira. So all of the medical benefits are going to be mirrored and covered in full. There are just some enhancements now that we can take advantage of. And then you'll still have your RX copays just like today. So very similar in that regard.
And then I just want to, Bob alluded to it, that, you know, what I've heard a lot about and take very, very seriously is about the process when for folks who have been on the Hartford and Medicare when coverage has been denied. So Christina has suggested, because as you put it at the last meeting we talked about this, that an Advantage plan is basically Medicare saying to Aetna, do our job for us. So it will not involve having to negotiate between Hartford and Medicare. So my fervent hope is this will alleviate some of the problems that people have had getting the coverage they're entitled to, and ultimately being made whole by the district. So I fervently hope it's better, which Christina has suggested. As Bob said, whether or not we stay with the Hartford or go to Aetna, this is something we're going to continue to work on. And I am happy to get, not happy, I'm willing to get the emails I've been getting. And frankly, I've been getting more emails about this than about school reopening. You know, to get the emails from retirees, many of whom I know, you know, explaining to me the problems they've run into. And so I am very committed to making sure that we can make this better for retirees.
Absolutely, Moira. And I think one thing we can especially focus on, I know we've done a lot of Zooms, you know, in light of COVID, but, you know, education is key. I know I mentioned this at the last meeting, but the number one reason retirees call in with a denied claim is because in the past their provider had not submitted it through Medicare. So Hartford gets it and they deny because Medicare hasn't paid yet. So the member calls thinking something's not covered when in reality it is. It just needs to go through Medicare, and we can assist with that very easily. We can call the doctor, make sure they submit it through Medicare, through Hartford. The member is all set. The second reason is the doctor doesn't put enough medical notes on it, unfortunately. So something that would have standardly been covered, the doctor maybe accidentally puts a different code or just sends it in kind of without thinking. The member gets a denial, calls us looking for reimbursement. In this case, actually the plan does pay for it. We just have to go back to the doctor, make sure they get the right code on it, and then that is paid. So honestly, those are the top two reasons that people call in with the denials. And so just educating on that. Another area too, we've heard from members that are calling their doctor now asking about Aetna. Their doctor will say, oh geez, you know, yeah, we don't take Aetna. What they're thinking of is an individual Medicare Advantage policy, right? So the retiree instantly is thinking they might not have coverage. This is a group policy that is designed for your group in particular. And there's no in and out of network. It's going to cover in or out. So even if the doctor doesn't accept Medicare, but they accept Medicare plus an additional fee, Aetna pays that. So it's also an education to the members to say to the doctor, all right, you need to call ENV, or I need to have ENV call you because you don't understand how this works. So again, we can share as much information as we want or as you want, you know, with members. Just that constant education will be important.
And as a former teacher, I'd like to help with that education.
Great.
I want to reiterate that what you see with ENV, what you see with Christina is what you get with ENV. These are friendly people who are smart and they know what they're doing in insurance. So as many times as I can, I want to remind Medicare retirees, if you're having any issue, call ENV, email ENV. They're really there to help you and they want to help you. Moira wants to help too. I want to help, but the experts are at ENV and they can do it much, much quicker and efficiently than we can. So thank you, Christina. Any further questions?
Thanks, Moira, as always, for that boots on the ground experience of dealing with Hartford and dealing with our retiree healthcare system. So Bob, we'll be looking for a resolution on the our next meeting, correct? And we
Yes,
can discuss. We'll discuss more at that time. But we appreciate Christina and Moira and Bob getting us through that, and Dr. Brown, if we could get into reopening planning and how certainly talking about impacting retirees. Let's talk about impacting our current staff and our outstanding students in the Ithaca City School District.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ms. Ainsley. And I have some friends and colleagues going to be supporting me with this conversation as well. No fancy slides tonight, just a conversation as we hope to address some questions that are being asked, talk about where we are, and talk about where we're going. As I think about this is yet another hard conversation. It's been 6 months of hard conversations. I have the privilege and honor of serving as an adjunct instructor at SUNY Cortland. I teach in the Ed Leadership course, Ed Leadership program, and I teach the district leadership course. And as I look on this call, there are a lot of folks who've gone through that class. We've had a couple hundred folks go through that admin training program and be a part of my course. And I say that because one of the texts we ask folks to read, and one of the themes is, how to engage in hard conversations with the community in tough times like this. The book that we give folks is Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most. It's Stone and Patton are the authors. But in that book, it walks through how to engage in these kind of dialogues. And it talks about, we all want to get to the constructive learning conversation. That's where we need to be as a community. We need that now more than ever. But before you can get to that, you have to come to a common understanding and mental model around what's happened, then navigate the emotions that are associated with what happened and the identity. And so I want to do that with us. It's important for us to just step back and what has happened. Yes, we've had to change plans. We've had to change plans more often than any of us would have liked in the midst of the ever-changing guidance, the ever-changing data, in the midst of a global pandemic. We, back in August, I wish I had the privilege about it, being able to predict what would happen. But back in August, when we were having conversations about the reopening plan and what choice we would provide families and staff, I remember at the time, the narrative in our state and around the country was, all right, if you're going to be offering a virtual learning experience, how will you staff it? Because most folks won't wish to teach virtually. That would be hard to get that kind of PD. It's a completely different model, but if you're going to offer virtual experiences, how will you get folks to wish to teach virtually? And then knowing that we will, and our numbers are holding true, about 20% of your staff is going to need some type of an accommodation. How do you do that? How do you staff? And so the questions around staffing existed then. We took a unique and we hoped would be an innovative approach to offering that kind of choice and voice to our families and educators, thinking that it would work out. We projected that it would work out, but it didn't. And we've had that conversation with our teachers. We're having that conversation with our families. And yeah, there are a lot of emotions associated with that. That is what happened. We had to change course. We had not only changed course around what we offered as far as choices, but we had to change even our opening date for in-person instruction because of HVAC issues, supply chain issues, because of the data that we all wanted to monitor. Just think, a month ago, we had no idea what would happen with the mobility and transitions taking place in our community and what the data would look like. I think we've been pleasantly surprised, but a month ago, people were really anxious about that. That informed our decision to delay our opening, which was a hard conversation. But again, as we've had to change things and make shifts, the emotions have come. People have been angry, they've been frustrated. There's a lot of fear. Folks have felt betrayed. There's a sense of loss. We acknowledge all of that, and it's fair. I've had that, both professionally and personally, as we've had to navigate that. And then it comes to the identity portion of this. Yeah, I'm superintendent. I've been here 11 years, and I've spent 11 years, this is my 11th school year, building relationships with families and teachers. Many of our teachers, some of my best friends, some of the best people I've ever had a chance to work with. You think I want to go to them and say, you know what, that option I provided you not long ago, I need to change that. The data's changed, we can't do that, we need to shift. As a superintendent, the leader, I have some identity issues I need to work through, and the emotions I need to work through myself when I have to go to someone that I love and trust and have been and spent a decade with to say, you know what, I can't do what I said I would do. So everyone, based on your family situation, having hear from the superintendent or the board that we need to now go in a different direction, you're gonna, for me, that's gonna be tough. What about childcare? What about the vulnerable people in my life that I'm afraid for if going back in person? So every one of us has to, one, come to a common understanding about what's happened. It's happened for a reason. It's not by design that we've had to make this kind of a shift and change, but it's happened. We all have the emotions. We all have some identity issues that we have to work through when connecting with this. But where we are now and where we need to be is where will we go and where will we learn, what will we learn, and how will we be constructive in our dialogues. I wish to thank the ICSD Reopen team. We've had those conversations over the last few weeks, and they have informed how we plan to reopen. They've been very fruitful. I wish to thank the ITA leadership, ITA members who have been informing us, members of all of our collective bargaining units who have been at the table engaged in conversations about what we will do. We've heard from everyone. Everyone has passionate opinions around what we should be doing. And now we're just going to talk about where we are right now. And Lily and Bob and the team will help me through this. Yes, we, at the elementary level, let's start there. We heard from our reopening team. We've heard from folks all along that the 5-day in-person experience was what our community wanted. We heard from the folks wanted to have the 5-day experience here because they wanted to be able to navigate childcare easily. Having the 2-day approach or a hybrid approach at the elementary level was going to be tough for our families. We heard that loud and clear. Although most, if not all, the school districts I can think of right now are using a 2 or 3-day approach or a hybrid approach, even at the elementary level. Here, folks said they wanted 5 days in person. And we, at this moment, are still planning to offer that. That's where we are. And that's been hard to do. The CDC guidelines, we can only have 10, I think sometimes 11 young people in a particular classroom space. If we use a gym, we can get up to 20, but we only have so many gyms in our school district. But our classrooms, our class sizes have to be small to adhere to the CDC guidelines. Yes, when we hear about the virtual experience for our young people, those classes are going to be larger. We knew that all along. We heard from folks, our parents, our teachers, at the elementary level, providing in-person instruction and at the same time providing a virtual experience for your young people who are Zooming in or coming in virtually was going to be, it's going to be hard everywhere. But we knew at the elementary level, we didn't want to go in that route. We're not going in that route. It will create a situation where the in-person experience is going to have smaller class sizes and the virtual one will be larger. Yes, those class sizes are going to be between 20 and 30. Yes. In other school districts that have gone with teachers teaching either completely virtual or completely in person, you're gonna have that kind of a ratio, unless we add about 25 or 30% more FTE and staffing. And that is something we as a school district, as a school community, as a state, I don't think we can be in a position to do that right now. So the in-person experience, yes, we still feel like we can do the 5 days in person. It will look like some ratios that are different, whether you're in person or whether you're virtual. We have said to folks, and this has been a tough one too, all along. I've been on those reopen conversations back in August, back in July, and when we said to families, if you wish to make a change, we will do our best to honor it. But we're asking folks to make a selection and stay with that selection through the first semester. We still need folks to stay with their selections through the first semester. Right now, we have a lot of folks who are wishing to transition from the virtual experience to the in-person one. That's going to be very hard. As right now, as we're putting together a class list, we're doing our cohorting, we're putting together our schedules. That's going to be a significant challenge for us to have that kind of mobility now over the next week and a half or 2 weeks before opening. It's also going to be difficult because we don't have the space right now. We don't. If we're going to stay with the 5-day in-person experience, if we have more and more families opting to be in person, we could quickly be getting into a hybrid approach at the elementary level, which is where everyone else is, where we would only be able to offer 2 or 3 days a week in order to keep the class sizes at 10 or 12 for in person. So I hear you folks wish to change their options, change the decisions to come from virtual to in person. We're asking for your patience. There may be openings as we have transitions in this community, which we oftentimes have, or if there's some families who are in person right now and choosing to be virtual, there may be some openings. But you may be hearing that some principals are saying we can't honor that request at this moment, and that is true, we can't. If you are in person and you're choosing to go virtual, we can have much more flexibility there. And if you have that request, please let us know. The instructional delivery, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Talcott here for a second to talk about that. But yes, we have talked much about what instructional delivery will look like at the elementary level and in the virtual environment with those class sizes being a bit larger. Ms. Talcott, you want to talk about elementary right now as far as the instructional delivery and how we look to use small grouping, chunking, et cetera, to deliver instruction to those in the virtual environment?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all, albeit virtually. My name is Lily Talcott, and I'm the Deputy Superintendent for the Ithaca City School District. So our teachers are fabulous professionals, and for many years have implemented small group instructional models for our young people. So really taking a look at where students are, what their strategy needs may be, what their academic and various, even at times social emotional needs, maybe interests, right? And created small flexible groups to allow for differentiation for individual students and those groups of kids. So we might start with a larger morning meeting, and that may be 15 minutes, right? And then we'll transition into smaller, say, reading groups, where we be reading together, watching a video, engaging in some comprehension questions, et cetera. And that may be a half an hour small group lesson, say 5 to 7 children, right? And then transitioning to another small group, right? So we want folks to, and we really want to build up the work that our teachers have been doing for many years. They're transitioning, of course, into the digital environment around small group instruction and thinking about the day in these smaller chunks and being flexible about that time.
Thank you, Ms. Talcott. Another question that's come up often, for virtual learners, we are taking a bit of a district-wide approach. While many of our virtual learners will stay with their peers and the cohort from their respective school, there will be some situations in our school district where young people at one elementary school will be connected with young people in another elementary school, and maybe with an educator that may not have always resided in their particular school. I see this as an opportunity. I know it will bring some angst, but we've celebrated in this setting and others our KDP program and other opportunities for young people to engage with one another across our school district. It allows for us to promote understanding and respect for students from other neighborhoods. It is a good model. And in this distance learning environment right now, we will be having some situations where young people from one school will be connected to young people from another school in a new class and configuration, and most likely with a teacher that they have not had an opportunity to be with. Some of our best educators are going to be virtual teachers only, and they will see young people that they would not have had an opportunity to meet and engage with before. And for me, that is a beautiful opportunity. And I do trust our educators, and I know the folks I'm talking about are going to do this well. So yes, that is something that we've been asked about often, and that is something that will happen. And it can be pretty good from my perspective. We're also,
Dr. Brown, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If you or Lily could speak to what support will look like in the classroom for these online learners, will there be a certain amount of teachers' aides, teachers' assistants attached to each of these classrooms? What does online learning look for someone who typically has a one-to-one aide? Would you be able to speak to us about what that learning experience will look like?
Sure, Lily and Mary, because Mary, you have some information to share on this one too. Go for it. Either one, go for it. Whichever one can find the mute button first can go. There's a race. There's a race to find it. There's a race. This is not making us look good right now. There's a mute button. Oh, Emily, can you unmute Mary? That's probably what's happening. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Apologies, folks. It wasn't allowing me to unmute. So specifically for students with the individual education plans who've elected to participate in distance learning, there's a virtual learning plan that is being created in collaboration with caregivers and their case managers or MEIs. And so that will really articulate depending on a student's goal. So if a student has a teacher assistant assigned to them, the teacher assistant would be able to support reteaching of content online or be available in small breakout groups that Ms. Talcott had referred to, as far as that really small group instruction is important. And so having an adult there, teaching assistant, to help reteach is one example of how they would be engaging in distance learning. Often, not always, aides also could be reteaching or supporting content, but often aides are supporting students with things that are hard to translate virtually, such as, elopement and not running away, or, behavior modification. So really having those conversations with the student's plan in front of us to guide what that can look like is going to be, in collaboration with caregivers, is going to be really important.
Just a follow-up question, how are we managing how many students with IEPs are being put in one class? So in terms of situations where we have a lot of students with IEPs who elected virtual learning versus in person, how is that caseload being brought forward where it doesn't lead to burnout for teachers?
It's a great question. So looking at the class makeups and really creating those learning communities that are as equitable as we possibly, as can be, both in person and online, taking into account students that have social emotional needs, additional social emotional needs, reading needs, math needs, really speech needs. And in ENL students, how are we working to cluster students so that there can be co-teaching opportunities for teachers and minimal co-plan people that they have to co-plan with. So that's a balance, because you don't want to put all the students with IEPs in one section. Obviously, we want to have them in both sections, but we also just want to be mindful that we're not spreading the students out to the point where we're asking teachers, a special education teacher, to co-teach with more than 3 to 4 general education teachers.
All right. Let's transition to talk a little bit about more secondary specific. Again, I know Pat mentioned it earlier. We wish to honor the student course selections and requests, and that is we're rather unique in that many high schools have had to condense their course offerings or their course catalogs. We did not do that, and that presented us some challenges. And one of the reasons why we had to move towards a hybrid approach to this. But again, we feel confident that we can provide a good opportunity and experience for our young people going forward. At the secondary level, we are asking educators, we had to make some decisions there. And now we're trusting our educators to design experiences for young people where we are teaching both in person, and those young people are going to be engaged in that same setting from a virtual environment as well. The other option would have been to have, some class sizes that are very small and some that would be very large at the secondary level. And there were some other constraints and barriers that were going to be hard to overcome at the secondary level. Again, we have some amazing educators who are working through this. Yes, it's going to be hard. We've never done this before. What we do know is that, most high schools and many elementary schools across our country are using a similar model. And we hope to learn from their approaches, but then also use our innovative thinking to make it better as well. Grading, attendance, those are big questions that we continue to engage in dialogue about. Ms. Talk, you want to talk about that? And I know some other folks, I know Mr. Trumbull's on the line, maybe some other folks can weigh in too about where exactly we are with some of those policy implications in the midst of this situation we find ourselves.
Sure, I'd be happy to start the conversation around grading. And then Jason Trumbull, who's the principal at Ithaca High School, and Lynn Vanderwoort, who's our evaluation officer, are also on the line and can speak some as well. And I know Dan Ryman is also here and can talk much more about attendance and the code of conduct addendum in addition as well. So in terms of grading, Meryl, thank you for bringing up what you did, and thank you to the board as well for addressing it as well. I think it's no secret that we have much work to do. Several years back, a researcher and expert on grading came to the Ithaca City School District and provided a great overview for us around really changing how we think about grading. So it's less about whether kids turn in something at a certain time, right? It's less about turning things in. It's no longer about zeros, right? It's actually about determining whether or not kids learn something. And our grading systems should move and evolve toward that, right? So we're engaging in what he calls standards-based grading. So the Gusky work from years back has carried through. We have, I think it's frankly gaining much more traction again. And in the spring, many of our educators, particularly at the secondary level, have been talking a great deal around really wanting to find out what students have learned and how we assess that and reflect that in grades, as opposed to what they have turned in and when, right? So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Trumbull and Ms. Vanderwoort to talk a little bit more about process, et cetera. I see also Mr. Mitchell is on as well, one of our wonderful associate principals at high schools. So Jason, you want to talk about process?
One more time, Lily, I'm sorry.
We got you.
A bit more about the context and the process that are undergoing and in the midst of, right? And is right ahead of us.
Yeah, I've heard Dr. Brown refer to Ithaca High School a lot this evening about student choice. And we are a student choice school, and we have a lot of opportunities for students to make choice. Scheduling certainly has been the primary drive all summer long to get ready for the fall. And we've got a few draft copies out to our staff now that talk specifically about attendance and engagement and what that means in regards to grading policies or protocols. And as you were talking about before, how do we make sure we're measuring what students learn in a genuine, authentic way? We've had a number of community meetings with folks. Meryl participated in that and really very much appreciate her perspective, and many other folks that shared with us in a couple of community forums. And we've also, as Dr. Harris knows, and many of you know, that we've had a number of student groups that have engaged in the work this summer as well to talk about grading and where we are, and a number of task force and working with the department leaders and going out to the broader staff kind of incrementally. It's tough to do with over 150 people in a building and working through departments in size of 20 or so. But focusing on what student choice may look like and giving students options to make sure that they're successful in the midst of a pandemic, but changing many of the things that we do in terms of rewarding and making sure we assess what students know and get them the supports when they're struggling. So we're at the infancy stage of some of the work that you framed and talked about, but we hear the community, we hear our students, we hear our staff, and it's now time for us to progress to get to one page so that we have general understanding about building-wide deadlines, awarding or not awarding zeros, how attendance impacts grading. All those kind of things they're all intertwined in a student's schedule. So last year we concluded the school year recognizing that we were in pandemic and emergency learning teaching, so to speak, that we gave students the option for pass, fail, or choose numeric. And families seem to appreciate that. I don't know that that's where we'll end up. We're in the midst, like I said, of a number of conversations to nail a number of practices down, but we've got to get better in terms of what are our building-wide consistent practices and policies, and isn't do curricular areas present particular challenges or ways to unify? In other words, should there be different grading protocols and policies in art or science compared to English and social studies? So those are the conversations that we're starting to dig into. But we've got a few drafts out there that I think reflect what the Board of Ed Code of Conduct Committee and the addendum work that should be aligned there. But we've got to have a larger conversation with all 150 people and to our departments so we're consistent, that families know exactly what to expect. So we're going to continue to create opportunities for folks to share where we think we want to be as a community, because I think a high school is the community in many respects. So I'll leave it at that and certainly take questions as people have them.
Jason, this is Moira. You know, this is something that I'm deeply interested in. And so I'd really love to see what you've got in draft form, just to have it to chew over. So I'd appreciate that.
That's not a problem.
This is, and I just one thought that I have. I think one of the difficulties is that students are starting now in a remote version, and so do you have some kind of temporary guidance, like an interim guidance, or is the guidance that from the addendum something that can work for you, and then go further and refine it?
We're going to need to continue to go further and refine, because we're really talking about all students being successful. I think the drafts, my apologies, I don't have them with me this evening, but I'll share them with you, that you can work through what guidance protocols are there. And it is difficult because this is a lot of the heavy lifting, along with what we've been struggling with all summer long in terms of a schedule. And I'll say it publicly tonight, I haven't had the time to really dive down deep and make sure that everybody on staff is fully aware of what shifting we're looking to change, and ensure that we have buy-in and understand that what we're going after. So that's been a struggle on my end, and that goes out to our staff and to you and the public as well. So we're working through those things. Thanks, Ann.
Thanks.
Jason, this is Pat. I have a question that's really specific to the mechanics of the hybrid instructional model. And, you know, I'm sitting home 3 days a week listening to my husband teach Soviet history remotely from the dining room and learning a lot more than I had ever known before, even though I've known him over 30 years. But, you know, at the primary level, you have teachers in the classroom, one group of teachers in the classroom, and you have another group of teachers who are working remotely. And that's one set of technology. But how are we using technology to let teachers teach simultaneously to students who are in class and at home? Because that's really not Zoom. I recalled that at one point, I think it was a presentation that Amanda gave, there was a mention of over 100 classroom cameras bought. Am I remembering that correctly? And is that being utilized for hybrid instruction?
Yeah, this is, that is true. You did remember that correctly. And we are taking multiple approaches to this. And we're learning from our neighbors who are already immersed in this process. Lily, you want to talk about some of the things we've learned, some of the things we're planning, but also noting that every educator may take a bit of a different approach with this as well. So Lily?
I think that's actually an important point to start with first, that we truly want to give our PLCs and our departments the opportunity to design what's going to work best given the content and practice strategies, standards that they're teaching, right? So, for example, there are a number of educators who are frankly more interested in beginning with a simple 5-minute mini lesson lecture with everyone, with students who are virtual on a Google Meet, while they're also with the rest of the class. Headsets for our folks, something we've learned regionally and nationally is that Having headsets for folks is key. And audio can be an issue. So that's something that we're learning. We've purchased those. And then transitioning into small group instruction, smaller group or independent or pair work breakouts where educators can jump in, guide the learning, support, and perhaps bring students back together, again, to wrap up, synthesize, et cetera, and then we send them for particularly independent work. You know, I've heard teachers talking about actually wanting to send their students outside as part of their 85-minute instructional block, right? To work independently. So they're not always in front of a screen, right? So I think there's a level of flexibility for our in-person and our remote learners. In terms of meeting their needs when it comes to our educators. And yes, we also have, very good cameras that are on our devices that we give to staff. We're ordering these headsets, and then we do have access to these swivel cams. I will say that when we brought up this mention of this technology, these cameras that follow the teacher around, a number of teachers are actually pretty apprehensive because to use those because it's very teacher-centric. It can be very teacher-centric, right? This camera actually follows the teacher around as opposed to allowing for more dynamic and sociocentric learning among our students, which our teachers have wonderfully been saying they want more of and they want to be able to facilitate.
Thank you.
I actually have another question, and it has to do with the transition that because of the way we started the school year completely remote, and then on October 5th, we're going to a different system. So my question, I guess, has to do with how we're preparing the staff, the families, and the children for that inevitable change, because there's this world we live in is continuously changing, but we know that's going to be another transition point. So how are we managing that?
Good deal of time today, and for a real example, we spent a good deal of time today talking through what it's going to look like for our freshmen that have never stepped foot on campus. So we're building a virtual tour, talking about folks being spread out amongst the campus, maybe an in-person / remote orientation, so to speak, that, we can't go in with the expectation that October 2nd or 3rd, whatever Friday is, and then roll into Monday that we have students just walking along. And frankly, it's going to look quite different for everybody, right? The cafeteria itself won't be the cafeteria. You'll have 10 students in a classroom that used to have 30. So when we roll through the cohorts of a Monday, Tuesday, and as the numbers are working out, we're cautiously optimistic about the numbers in terms of the way they're working out, in terms of the third of the students rotating through and folks being hybrid or online for the other 3 days. Those are the conversations that we're having, and to prepare folks for quite a different look and feel is going to have us in the building, and my hope is that more interplay, more time in the building increases that sense of community that we have here, and folks pulling out all the stops to make sure that kids are successful.
No, that's a secondary example. And at the elementary level, it's important for us to acknowledge that there will be many young people and families who are going to have to transition from one elementary teacher to another in the coming weeks. That is a reality. As an former elementary teacher, I know how difficult that can be, and as a parent, I know how difficult that can be. We will be handling that in as loving and as patient as an approach as we can. It's interesting, every year around this time, and I've been doing this a while now, every year around this time is when I'm getting the emails and setting up the parent meetings with parents and families who wish to change the teacher. Because at this point, I think I want to go in a different direction. This year, I'm getting those same kind of questions and meeting requests to not change the teacher. So yeah, it's going to happen. We're going to do our best to match up families to educators and to do the court holding as we always do. But I just need to note that we will have some families who will be changing the teacher at the elementary level this year as we make this transition.
We're hoping not to have that happen at the high school.
Yeah, that was one of the beauties of the model, yeah.
We're very hopeful in the early indications in terms of space. We're cautiously optimistic that as we'll be 3 weeks in October 5, that you're able to stay with your original teacher. And for the most part, we're able to offer the wide course selections that we've been able to do, which frankly makes us at the high school. So it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't been articulated at all. It's been a theme. It's been a tough summer, tough fall, but we're hopeful that and that the relationship between students and their teachers is a magic one that we've come to know.
Hey, Jason, it's Nicole. I was wondering if you could speak to how the deans at the high school are managing supporting students during this transition. Zach and Karen Arnold spoke earlier this evening about the report of Canvas and showed us a graph of students that are logging into work, logging into the platform, and those that are not, and just wondering your strategic approach to engage students that have not been logging into virtual learning and how we're supporting those families.
Yeah, so we have 3 deans. Each dean is assigned to a particular grade level, and then we divide the senior class into thirds. The deans have looped with each year, so in other words, the current juniors have had Miss Blizzard from 9th grade on, so we've already established some foundational relationships there. When we get the Canvas reports and understand who's logged in and who hasn't logged in, what we've asked in the shift that we've made in our attendance protocols, thus far our folks have asked about the guidance. We've shifted attendance protocols around really making sure that the adults that are working with the children are the first ones that call. So if I'm teaching the class U.S. History first period and I haven't seen a couple of children, we're asking that teacher call them directly. Now, if you can't get a hold of the family or the student to see what supports are needed, then the deans swoop in, so to speak, and provide those services. If it's a hotspot that's needed, if it's inconsistent Wi-Fi, we're able to then network out and make sure that we are advocating for the students. Students also have, along with their grade assigned dean, they've got a school counselor as well, and an AP associated with the grade. So we've got small teams around each child. So we're really trying to take an RTI approach to attendance and grading as well in terms of support.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions that are more general, I guess, and it has to do with meeting the needs of particular age groups. So I don't even know whether this is possible, so I guess that's my question, that for the lower elementary grades, is it possible to make those virtual cohorts smaller than, say, at the upper grades? And is it desirable?
Given our current staffing, and Dr. Brown alluded to this, we've worked with folks have been extraordinarily flexible, our teachers, and also our substitute union, in order to actually have more educators, elementary educators, than we typically do on staff, so that we can make those distance learning cohorts and in-person cohorts actually really work logistically. If we were to do that at this time, frankly, it would mean that the upper grades would be larger, right? So we would say they would go beyond 30.
Right.
my stepmother who teaches in California is always excited when she only has 34 fifth graders, right? It's a different standard. It's simply not what we're used to here, right? And so that would be the impact of that. I think the other important thing to note is, and again, you know, I was an early elementary teacher. Although I did not teach virtually, I understand how 30 kiddos is still much more than, again, we're used to, right? That because of the synchronous and asynchronous time, the amount of time that we're really asking kids to be engaging live with the educators, it's a smaller portion of the day. So if I were a first grade teacher again, Moira, I might be saying, all right, I'm going to meet with everybody all together first thing in the morning, and then I might really break things up so that I'm meeting with every small group every single day, focusing on this group in the morning and this in the afternoon, right? I might even work with families and see what works best for them. Again, that's an approach I might take as an educator, and a number of our educators are also exploring that as well.
So just another question related to a particular age group. So for our middle school students, younger middle school students, I've heard, and I certainly can imagine, that there's concern about, 3 days a week where, they're not getting, I'm talking about the in-person folks, that they're not in school. 3 days a week, they're not in school, and having some kind of something happened in the community, so that kids are, 11 and 12-year-olds aren't home alone on those days they're not in school.
So I'm trying to get the question. Are we partnering?
Is there anything being worked on to provide something for those kids so that they're not home alone 3 days a week at age 11 and 12?
Yeah, I mean, we've offered childcare resources. We've highlighted that. I think we have some of that on our website. We have made some connections with the Y and GAC on their programming. But as far as our school district, we are right now not licensed to provide childcare. We can only partner with our community organizations to provide some supports on those during those times when young people aren't with us. Am I leaving anything out, team? There some things that you can think of. I mean, this is a tough one. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to have the 5-day experience for both levels. And another reason why we're very fortunate to keep the 5-day experience at the elementary level, because we heard loud and clear from our community that those off days would be a huge challenge for us. Yeah, one of those situations I don't have a great answer. We are just acknowledging another issue that we need to address. Maybe now, Ms. Dames, I mean, as we try to close this up, going back to March, and I'm thinking back to the first virtual meeting we had, I talked then about we would learn a lot about our culture during this process for however long it would last. And, we said there would be things about our culture that we would want to keep and some things that we would want to change about our culture. I'm still in the midst of, I'm still reflecting on what's changing about our school culture, but I know there are many things that existed before that are still alive and well. Perfectionism is one. A lot of what I hear from folks, a lot of what I'm doing to myself is around perfectionism. We want this to be perfect. Before we roll our plan out, before we do anything, we want it to be great. And we're in a situation, I know that's not going to be possible right now. And should it be possible? So it's going to challenge us on that part that's a part of our deep culture here, school culture around perfectionism. And we are going to have to grapple with that. The sense of urgency, I have navigated that very well, been successful providing answers when folks ask me or getting right back to them with an answer. The sense of urgency that's associated with folks wanting to know the name of their teacher, their schedule. I think our industry is being challenged on that part of our deep culture right now as well. If getting an answer immediately, please anticipate that it's probably not a good one, because in the midst of all these changes and shifts, we have learned that a sense of urgency isn't always going to result in one's best thinking or sorting through all the different alternatives that may present themselves. So I could go on and on. I even talked about this in the convocation about the characteristics that are deeply embedded in school culture. But as I reflect on what we are going through right now, I see that those pieces that are part of our culture that are deeply embedded are rearing their heads. I can't say it's an ugly head, but they're rearing their heads as we engage in these tough dialogues right now. With that, if we were here to take any other questions, but I think
I have a question,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is a Dr. Brown Lilly question or a Lynn question, but how do you foresee us evaluating success? So as we start now and we go into winter time and we think about the next quarter or half a year, how are we planning to evaluate how successful our students and our staff are during this time in terms of thinking about how to make virtual and in-person learning fair, equitable, and quality?
Yeah, I would ask that we have this as an agenda item for a future meeting where we can really dig into this, because this would take some time. I would say some initial successful benchmarks for us would be, one, to open. That would mean that our community have done its work to keep the prevalence of this deadly virus and disease low in a way that we can open. That would mean everything, and in my role, everything from the HVAC issues to the staffing concerns to all the things that we're attempting to navigate just to open up our buildings would have been accomplished. And we will be one of the few small city school districts to do so in the ways in which we're trying to do. Just opening will be a benchmark that we got to get to first. Secondly, before we even think about how to assess one's academic performance at this point, we need to reestablish community. We haven't seen our young people in a space since March 13th. It has negatively and significantly impacted the community that we spent a long, long time developing. I'm hoping that we start by building those connections and those relationships with our young people. And it may take a while. And then we need to get to where our young people are academically. I keep hearing from everyone, you can't pick up an educational journal right now and folks aren't referring to young people falling behind. And I keep asking, what is behind? Because we're all in the same boat right now. and thinking about the inequities that are being created when folks are trying to assess who's behind and who's not, who's had access to what and who hasn't. So for us, yeah, there are academic issues that we need to get a handle on. We need to talk about that. But I hope that people understand where I'm coming from with regards to opening, establishing community and relationships first. And then, because what our young people don't need is when they come back and we start talking about where you are with your Fontes and Bunnell assessment, where you are with your reading scores, and whether or not you have regressed or not. So I hope that makes sense, but I do want this to be another item because there are a lot of other technical pieces that I wish to share, and I want us to spend some more time thinking about, how are we going to evaluate in June whether or not this has been, if we've had many successes this year in this new environment. But again, that's going to be pushing against our culture too, because we live in a school culture that wants us to grade, that wants us to sort and select, that wants us to determine who's ahead and who's behind. And I'm asking for us to pump the brakes and be patient on that right now.
And I agree with all of that. I guess I was talking more from an engagement point of view, less about academics, but how we're thinking about engagement and how we engage with students, being that some students obviously strive better from in person and just socializing versus like being in a screen. Like right now, I'm not my best self. I've been at my computer since 8 o'clock this morning. So how are teachers, how are support staff, how are we thinking about engagement and how students engage and how they do their best work? But I agree with everything.
Yeah. Let's come. We now have the tools in place where we can actually capture that data. Cameras, Seesaw, we can capture technical data associated with how many young people are logging on for how long, but then there's some other more qualitative data that we need to sort through too.
Before we wrap up, can we get a quick, I've been asked by several people, a quick refresher on the policies for when someone tests positive. And then of course, the constant question is, are we gonna implement any testing?
A couple of things, and let me talk about the testing one, because I'm sure this is going to be a headline tomorrow. Yes, we have been in multiple conversations with our friends at Cornell University. I mean, I hope folks saw Good Morning America today, where our folks from Cornell were highlighted in their efforts around surveillance testing. Yeah, we are engaging in conversations with them about what that could look like for us. Do we do some testing in that first week of school? To give a sense of if there's a prevalence of the disease here in our schools or amongst our creek, is it going to be a random test or is it going to be voluntary? So we are working through that. I don't have much more to share with folks right now, but we are talking about what it would look like to administer some type of an assessment here, some kind of testing here. But we also need to remind folks that anyone in Tompkins County can get tested by making an appointment and going to the mall too. But we are looking at some options here for us internally. And I'll refer to Lily or Carrie, if Carrie is on the line, to talk about what happens in our schools when we have those positive cases, which I need to say to folks, we will have some cases in our school district, just like everyone else who's opened up has had pretty much as well.
Sure thing. Yeah. So I think probably the most important thing is that you know, first and foremost, if an employee or a student tests positive for COVID-19, we have a responsibility to maintain as a community their confidentiality, right? And their right to privacy. That being said, we also partner very closely with the Tompkins County Health Department. So we would support any contact investigation with the health department and share information with them so that they then move forward with a process to, we notify, right? They conduct the contact investigation, interview folks who were close contacts, right? It's important to note that close contacts are folks who are closer than 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes, right? Then those close contacts are notified by the nurses from the health department in order to provide support and guidance around quarantine, testing, et cetera. And if the health department doesn't notify folks, then they don't need to quarantine, et cetera. Then, of course, we work very closely with the Tompkins County Health Department to determine the transition, the impact throughout a given cohort or potential grade level or wing of a school or an entire school, up until, of course, multiple schools, school district, et cetera, to transition to distance learning and have folks go home. So in the event of positive cases, we work very closely in close collaboration with the Tompkins County Health Department in order to make that determination.
Any other questions for Dr. Brown, Mr. Trumbull, et cetera, right now? Ongoing work, ongoing conversations, ongoing dialogue with the community, and ever changing and ever adapting, Dr. Brown. Thanks, Jason, for your work at the high school and getting ready. Look forward to October 5th, certainly at the high school and throughout the district. October 5th will come, just as all the dates come to us, and we look forward to that and look forward to having some students being able to be in person. We will address reopening again and again. But if we need to meet between this meeting and the next meeting to vote on anything, we meet on Tuesdays for our work sessions but as a board, know that we're ready to support the administration and our teachers and our staff in any way that we can. You have to just call. We're here. We're ready, ready to help in any way that we can. But we're here to support you and encourage you to take a break every now and then. Go home. We're gonna wrap up with a few other items right now, and then let everybody go. Really, if we can move on, or there's nothing else for reopening right now, the New York State School Boards Association is going to have a virtual convention, and I believe Ann and Pat are going to participate in that virtual convention. No going to New York City or Buffalo or Rochester, but we just have to authorize that you go, and meaning that there is still a fee, and we as a board have to authorize that. Without further ado, I certainly thank Ann and Pat for the willingness to step up and do that. So we just need a motion and a second so we can vote. And Ann, you can make the motion, since even though you're on it, you can go ahead and make the motion.
Oh, okay. I make the motion. How does exactly? I don't have the exact wording for Pat Wazaloo and Ann Rutland to virtually attend the New York State School Board Association conference.
Thanks, Ann.
I'll second it.
And thank you, Pat, and for seconding. And Tricia, if you could do the roll.
Sure. Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyle,
Yes.
Eldred Harris, Nicole Lefebvre, Moira Lang.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Nicole Lefebvre, Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichland,
Yes.
Pat Wazaloo.
Yes.
Motion passes. We certainly had enough votes, I believe. And then another resolution designating a voting delegate for the NYSBA conference, and I believe that is Ann, correct? Yes. Resolution in motion to appoint Ann Reichland as voting delegate at the annual NYSBA convention. Actually, it's an important role and and one that Ann is quite familiar with, and so I'm all for that. So unless Ann has some reason that she does not want to do it, we'll Pat, why don't you go ahead and nominate her?
I nominate Ann Reichland to be our voting delegate at the NYSBA virtual convention, because I certainly don't want to be it.
I second it.
Thank you, Maura. And no better reason can be stated, Pat, than that. So, Tricia, please go ahead.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyle,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Nicole Lefebvre, Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Ann Reichland,
Yes.
Patricia Wazaloo.
Yes. Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you, Ann.
Well, I'm happy to do it. We actually have a resolution that it's going to go to the business meeting. So
Through the efforts of Ann and the advocacy committee, I think it's, once again, leading the way. Ann, thank you very much. There's another item on the agenda. I will suggest that we punt the in-person Board of Education meetings discussion or idea. I don't know that we really need to address that tonight. I think we've had enough on the agenda, unless we really want to address that now. At some point, the governor, through his wisdom, will no longer defer the legal requirement that we meet in person for a legal meeting and have a quorum and votes. And that would be the only way we would have a true legal voting meeting, would be in person. So as of now, that is not the case, but eventually, as we move students and staff and buildings for in-person instructions, that we're going to need to come up with a way that we can meet in person, and also have folks that for a variety of reasons cannot meet with us in person, meaning board members that may not be able to meet with us in person, that they can also participate. So that will be the task ahead. That's secondary to reopening schools right now. But eventually, yes, we will meet in person, as Board of Educations have done for decades and decades. So that once again, something that will be different, and where we will do that, how we would televise that, how we would webcast that. So that all has to be worked out. But I suggest that we think about that, but then discuss later, if that's okay with everybody. We good? We good with that? All right. So any other discussion items by anyone that we need right now?
Rob,
Go ahead,
because it's an agenda item, do we have to table it, or because it's not a voting item, we don't have to?
It was just right. It was just a kind of a placeholder on the agenda, just to bring up the topic. I addressed it briefly. You can all say that it was spoken to, but unless you really want to talk about it now, we don't.
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. We don't, right, and so we had, when it fits on the agenda, we can start addressing the idea. But know that someday we will meet in person, which I don't think is a bad thing. It'd be great to be able to do that. And if there's nothing else, thanks, Lily, for all your work. Appreciate it. Dr. Brown, Mary, Amanda, Bob, go down the list, Dan, for all your input. It's much appreciated. Staff, teachers, we're back at school, and eventually we'll have some kids in school. So anything else, Dr. Brown, before we let everybody take a break? Very good. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see everyone soon and talk soon at our next meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Good night, everyone.